It's another great day. I'm Dean Jones, President and CEO of Realogic Sotheby's International Realty, and this is Market Perspectives, and we have a very special guest today, Dwayne Clark with Aegis Living, on location in your beautiful headquarters right here on the east side. How are you doing?
We are. Good. Great.
I'm so excited to be talking with you again. We were just chatting. I think it was about 10 years ago. We had a similar meeting with our team on the waterfront in Seattle. And boy, a lot's changed in 10 years.
A lot has. Good and bad.
Good and bad. We're going to get into that because we could go so many different places in this conversation. But first, I have to give you this compliment. I am just so impressed with you as an individual, as a philanthropist, as a collector, as a business leader, as a family man. I mean, we could go down any one of these channels.
Thank you.
But it's really an honor that you would take time with me and our audience. But remind our audience, who is Aegis Living and what is our business model so we can have some context?
Sure. Well, Aegis Living has been around since 1997. I founded the company. We operate 41 kind of luxury, high-end senior housing, mostly in the high acuity space. So assisted living, dementia care. We're kind of the four seasons of senior housing. And we have multiple locations in Seattle, about 24, multiple locations in Northern Southern California, and one in Las Vegas.
And how did you back into this career? I know you had some other professional journeys. Can we share what those were?
Sure. Yeah, I started with a great company called Leisure Care. Ironically, the founders of those companies is my next door neighbor, Chuck and Karen Lytle. Really good people, really good company. Yeah. So I spent 7 years from there. I started when I was 26, spent 7 years with them, and then got recruited away by a small company at the time called Sunrise. And Sunrise went on to become the largest senior housing company in the world. They had 552 communities. So got recruited away from Leisure Care to be senior vice president, then executive vice president of Sunrise. Spent 5 years with them and then said, you know what, I think I'd like to go do this on my own. And found a partner. Started the company with friends and family money, no institutional capital, anything, in 97. Did 3 rounds of capital raise and struggled because it's very capital intensive business.
Sure.
And then in 2008 bought my partner out, and so I'm the sole proprietor. My senior staff owns some of the company, but it's family run, family owned, family controlled.
I mean, it's an incredible success story, and obviously well timed for demographics and the psychographics of what you're targeting and what's around us in real estate. And we'll definitely talk about that. I'm just thinking, I mean, that's only 5 years before I started my company. I founded in 2002, and I'm a little jelly. You're doing great.
Well, if you're around after that many years, you shouldn't be jealous, because I think the statistic is less than 5% of companies make 20 years.
Okay, well, then I'm good.
Yeah, you're good, right? Now, the next 20 years, that'll be a little bit more difficult, right?
I mean, the next 20 years, I might be one of your clients.
Yeah, we'll take you.
Well, and let's talk about that, because I drive past your billboards of senior advertising, and I can't say that I've seen a lot of that in the past. Certainly by reputation, we've done some business. You're a client, and I respect that very much. Thank you for your trust in Sotheby's International Realty and in the auction house as well. The billboards, future old person. Who came up with that?
Well, it was a collaborative effort. We've got a really good ad agency. We put out an RFP. We interviewed multiple ad agencies. I was very involved in this process because I wanted to change the paradigm of aging, right? We selected a company called Little Hands of Stone, great company, great innovators. I was very determined that we were going to do something different. In fact, I flew them to my ranch and said, you're not leaving here till you get something that I mostly love, right? And so they stayed there and we worked on the campaign a great deal. But really what I was trying to do was change the paradigm of aging, right? And that's why we start our ad out with a baby being born. Because the minute a baby is being born, you're aging, right? I mean, it's 5 seconds older than 5 seconds ago. And for some reason, especially in the United States of America, we stigmatize people that have gray hair, that maybe walk a little different and so on. And, you know, I spend some time in Europe. That's not the case there. They revere their elderly. They're gods practically. It's often you see 3 generations, 4 generations walking down the street after dinner hand in hand, right? And we don't do the same here. And So we're trying to break that stigma of, hey, if you have gray hair or you hear a little different or if you walk a little different, you're not devalued, right? In fact, aging is a gift. I mean, it beats the alternative, right?
It sure does. And I think, gosh, I have a number of thoughts on that as I'm graying before you. Choosing how to live in the sunset of life, I mean, it is a choice mostly in America. So thankfully, you are providing, as you said, the 4 seasons of care. These should be the best years of your life. And I do think if you can afford it, it is a very responsible thing to do for family. To share a personal story, well, my folks are in the 80s and they are doing well, but they are going through a massive change in their life. They're selling the large home. They're selling virtually all their assets to consolidate, get more involved in, I would say, passive investments instead of ones that are more active and stressful, doing more travel. They're in Europe right now, living in a 1-level condominium, not yet with any continuing care facilities. But I will tell you, we had an estate planning meeting with them. And the first time we've done this, and we're not the executors. We're not sure what's going to all play out. That's to be revealed to us at the right time in the future. But I could tell the care that they were going through to plan for their future. And it was actually a loving thing, even though we had to let go of some property that, we might wanted to keep as a legacy. They were just trying to decide how it was all going to unwind. Not that that's being planned for immediately, but it was ultimately read by the family as a loving move so that you're not stressed at the time that a passing occurs.
Well, you're very, very fortunate because most people do not do that for their children.
Right.
And their parents pass away and they're going through probate for 2 years.
Wow.
And it's a nightmare and stress on their life. And even wills that are well planned and well executed, it's still traumatic. First of all, you've lost a loved one, right?
Yeah.
So the pain and suffering that you go through with that alone is shattering, and then you have to deal with the courts and the laws and estate tax and,
especially
death
here in
tax.
Washington, right?
Oh, yeah. It's funny, Dean. I probably get, 3 to 4 phone calls a month from wealthy families saying, where can I move my parent?
Right.
What state can I move my parents to? So a lot of people go to Wyoming. A lot of people go to
Florida.
Texas. A lot of people go to Florida. A lot of people go to Nevada. But, it's sad to me that the titans of the state, the people who built the schools and the roads and the museums and the arts and everything else, have to, or don't have to, but choose to leave in the last year of their life. So, they're not paying estate tax or death tax, I should say.
Well, and I think when you are thinking of your elders and the kind of environment that they want to live in, I mean, obviously, depending on what level of care they need, I mean, your facilities are beautiful. Here comes another compliment. You could live in any of these facilities and be quite happy. I mean, it's the 5 seasons, let's be honest. They're architecturally significant, so thoughtful, original artwork, sometimes demographically aligned with various cultures. They each feel bespoke to the neighborhoods that they're within. They're literally in residence, right? Your new Laurelhurst facility. And I tried to do the same thing, Dwayne, with our retail storefronts.
Right.
We're on Main Street, just a few miles from here. And that feels like old Main Street in Bellevue. Our Kirkland retail location feels like the Marina District in Kirkland. Belltown's Belltown. Bainbridge Island is very Winslow, very Bainbridge Island. And it's a little bit like the hotels, if you could stay in a Westin, to pick on a brand, and you could be in Shanghai, Singapore, or Chicago and not know where you are because the elevator buttons look the same and the lobbies look the same. Good job, by the way, on not just rubber stamping, carbon copy, whack-a-mole real estate development. Tell us about that.
Well, I've always been perplexed by, chain companies that just drop their box in a neighborhood, right? And I know why they do it, right? It's efficient, right? The construction's efficient, the architect's efficient. I mean, they get the efficiencies out of it. They stack units, whatever. But the counter argument to that is that people live in that neighborhood for a reason. The history, the architecture, the people, the culture, whatever. And so, I mean, we do some funky things in our building. The Ballard building that we just built, which is almost at the epicenter of Ballard, like 12th and Market, a block off. They said, well, what's the wow factor? I said, well, I want you to build a Viking ship and hang it from the ceiling. And they, they always look at me like I've been drinking a fifth of tequila before I come into this meetings. And I go, no, I'm serious. I really want you to build a skeleton of a Viking ship and hang it from the ceiling. And they're like, okay. And they did. They built a Viking ship. They hung it from the ceiling. And then we got all this old Scandinavian art and ship stuff and fishing stuff and so on. It's Ballard, man. It is Ballard to the max.
These are living museums that you've built. Yeah. And I do think they're more interesting to engage and obviously stimulate the minds. They're grandchild traps too, right? They're in great urban locations. So it's not like you're going down a dusty road to visit grandma where the kids are screaming the whole way and saying, what am I going to do?
Right.
You're in urban locations mostly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we just opened last month in Laurelhurst, and it's literally right across the street from the soccer field, baseball field. And I said, well, this has got to be collegiate. You know, let's make it look, let's build the building look like a big frat house, right?
Right.
And, you know, and then I said, well, you know, everybody's into college sports. I can see Husky Stadium from here. Let's put a big Husky flag up. Let's build an Apple Cup mini football field in the Alzheimer's unit. Let's put an RV in there for tailgating. Let's have a helmet car that runs around, you know. Let's have a club lounge like the Tyee Club Lounge. Let's have all the flags of the old Pac-12, you know.
I love it.
And so people then, first of all, we're trying to break the paradigm of what people expect, right? They're like, when you go in, they're thinking, oh, this is going to be that place where it smells and the fluorescent lights are on and someone's announcing something on the call system. And then they come in and the 50-year-old goes, I would live here. Yeah. That's what we're going for. When the 50-year-old says, I would live here, then we know we've met our threshold.
I think throw in the UW cheerleaders and I'll move
there
in there
you go.
Too. I mean,
we did have Coach Fish open it up for us.
Did
so,
you?
Yeah, and
you're
brought
so
the
clever. And I just love that you're having fun with it. And, you know, you're clearly a category buster. You're way out ahead of, I mean, is second place even close?
Well, you know, sometimes people ask, you know, who our competitors are, and we say, well, it's Nordstrom and Amazon and these other places.
Right.
We don't name a senior housing competitor because those are innovators, right? Those are people that think differently. They think out of the box. And I don't think anybody thinks like us. And I'm glad for that, right? Because it's hard to copy what we're going to do next because there's no way of knowing.
You don't know yet.
Well, I know in the next one, but maybe not 4 down the line.
Okay.
And, you know, it's always fresh, right? And so, you know, one of our buildings, we have an REI campground in the building, you know. I mean, they're just so different. I mean, Mercer Island, we have an old Chris Craft in it, you know, because people boat around Mercer Island, right?
Yeah.
And so we're trying to make it feel like, oh, this is home. And it tells a story about the neighborhood. It tells a story about the culture. And that gets people feeling like, this is my home. You know, these are my things. These are the things I grew up with. And
they're not descending to a different life or a different environment. And really they're ascending into the life better lived because it's curated by those who know best. And so there's surprise and delight. I know the food is always on top. Obviously the service and the care goes without question. The architecture, the quality of materials, the healthy environments that you're on. I mean, I remember being with you when you opened up in Newcastle and cultural alignment that you had
Chinese,
there, all Chinese. And we were doing our all Mandarin publications back then. And obviously, you know, things have changed politically and that's slowed down a little bit since. Doesn't mean the demand has slowed down. It just means the capital has slowed down.
Right.
And I remember you saying that one of the reasons to be here is there was an active outlook for folks to see kids playing in the park or being near water, the whole feng shui. And I was so impressed that you didn't need to go there. You didn't need to spend that much attention to detail, but you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
And so you're going to where the market's going next because you're getting there first.
Well, believe me, my development officers are always saying, we don't have to spend this much. And I go, yes, we do. It's our brand. And so I think when you design something, you really want it to be the best.
Right. And
it's a quality issue. You know, it's like, if you take like designer clothes, for instance, once a designer gets to have a really good name recognition, they start to go cheap on materials, right? And so it's like, well, if I have Gucci on this, no matter what it's made of, they're going to buy it, right? And so the problem with that is you don't meet the value curve, the value intersection, right? Where they say, if I pay this much, is that worth the value of what I paid for it? And that's, every customer has the right to ask that question. Does this meet the value intersection? The pay versus the culture, the product, whatever, the service. And so if it doesn't meet the value intersection, customer's not going to tell their friends about it. They're definitely not going to come back. They're not going to purchase again. So we always look at that and say, does this meet the value intersection? And it's not cheap. We're probably the most expensive senior housing group on the West Coast.
But I would submit you also have price elasticity, meaning that to the extent it's still attainable, and if it was myself making decisions for my parents, knowing what they've invested in me all these years, I wouldn't want to hold them back from the best. I mean, why shouldn't they have a wonderful sunset of life that could literally add years to their life?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on. And, one of the things that we've tried to do is buy in neighborhoods where land is cheaper.
Okay.
And so, 30% of our cost is land cost, right? So that's going to drive the rent. So if I buy in Kent or Linwood, it's going to be a lot cheaper than buying in Mercer Island or Bellevue, right? So we have pricing products. And when you have clusters, you can say, well, here's an option for you that may be $1,000, maybe even $2,000 a month less if you wanted to live in one of these communities. Because again, those costs are passed through to us, right? So that's helpful in projecting that. And, we try to really be upfront about what the cost is. One of the things that's a variable is we don't know how people are going to age, right?
That's true.
And so the care is elastic. And so, if somebody comes in and they're driving their car and they're walking and they're playing golf, and then 6 months later they have a stroke, and it's a game changer, right? And so they go from almost no care to almost total care. And the cost of that involves the time and the cost of your care staff. So, we can't be predictive about that, but we can be pretty predictive about rents and things like that.
Well, we know we are going to age. I think I walked by in your beautiful lobby a ticker. Tell me about that.
Well, we built this office for a couple reasons. One, for people who applied for a job, we wanted them to see the soul of our company.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've been upstairs yet or not. If not, we'll give you a little tour up there. We wanted them to see the soul of our company, meaning that it's one thing to come into an office and sit down and it's clean and there's a couple of nice pieces of art and so on, but we wanted the office to tell a story, right? Since we moved from our old office, which was in Redmond, to here, our closing ratio on new employees has gone up probably 20%. Because each of these things tells a story. We have a whole philanthropy wall where there's actual stories of philanthropy, right? The clock that you see, it's the business we're in. We're the business of life expiring, right? I've actually caught people standing in front of that clock with tears in their eyes, And it's set at a life clock at an average age of 80-some years old, and we just start counting it backwards. And so, if you look at it, it says make every day count, make every second count. It's like, you don't know, right? And so, and there's so many little nuances in this office that we have a bunch of hallmark stations. Like you saw that big head from this Spanish sculptor out there. Well, that's emblematic of the fact that we like people with big brains to work here, right? Upstairs, we have a television screen with Robin Williams giving an epilogue, and we have his actual favorite bike underneath it. And, he's essentially saying we're not on this planet long. We have a custom bike that I own, actually won about 8 years ago, the most beautiful bike in the world, in the United States, excuse me. But then we did a mural of top CEOs that were innovators. Howard Schultz, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, all these people. And we put leather jackets on it and essentially said, this is the rebellious group. What we're trying to portray in that is that good companies have a rebellious streak. And so we made them into these bikers, right? That these were rebels. So everything you go into tells a story. And so when people go, oh, I see your soul, man. I see what you're passionate about. And a lot of times companies don't convey that. They go, well, here's the job, here's the pay, here's the benefits, here's the thing I want you to focus on.
Straight to the boardroom,
Yeah. But they don't see your soul. And when they see your soul, that's why all the rooms are named. Everybody gets to pick a quote specific to their way of thinking to put on their office window. You can really see the passion that we put behind this.
And I was just walking past, I think that's a Model T.
Yeah, that's a 1923 Model T. The reason, and it was a delivery truck that used to do fruits and vegetables and so on. I actually bought it. Macklemore, who's a good friend, had an auction, and that was for sale. Okay. I bought it because it was the year my mother was born. So
fun.
My mother, who's a great motivating and a guiding light for me, I thought, that'll make me remember her.
And now I'm thinking of your wife, T, and the supermodel she is in your life. And what a great job on your birthday party many years back. That was super fun. Let's talk about your mom for a second, because if I recall 10 years ago when we had you on stage, you were telling a story about a prior life path in a different kind of facility and how much your mom meant to you and maybe a driving force today still. Share with us.
I grew up with a dad who wasn't the best character. He kind of abused my mom, abused my brothers and sisters. I was the baby of the family by 7 years, the baby. So much older brothers and sisters. Physically abusive man, drinker, not a good guy, philanderer. And he just kind of abandoned our family when I was 6 or 7 years old. You know, as a 6 or 7 year old, you kind of wonder, hey, what just happened? So my mom took the 4 kids under her wings. My brother just started his freshman year at college at the time. I think my sister was just about to graduate high school, and my other sister was a sophomore. And so all 4 of her kids went to college, and she worked 2 jobs and really was a great model citizen in terms of hard work and incredible inspirer. You know, she would say, hey, you're going to be president of the United States someday. I mean, I don't know what mother tells kids this, you know, but she was a huge Kennedy fan. And ironically, Kennedy was killed on my 5th birthday. Oh. And I came home to have my birthday party, and she was ironing and crying. And I'm like, where are the cupcakes? Where are the hats? Where are the, you know, and balloons? And she's like, we're not having your party. And of course, I threw a fit. And, and she goes, it was a very bad day in America.
Yeah.
And now I have one of the largest Kennedy collections in the country.
You know, that is so fascinating. And I want to draw from this how you apply that to your purpose today. And I saw the word purpose on one of your walls with those little flip cards of individuals. And I just sense that that's a cultural movement within your company. And I'm a big fan of, I'm from Canada, but I'm a big fan of Kennedy too, because, you know, when you're trying to rally your country in a time of Kennedy, you know, I choose to go to the moon because it's hard. I mean, you need to have a vision and audacious goals to rally people. So how are you applying that in your business?
Well, I mean, the old expression, too much is given, much is expected, right? I think you have to start there. And, you know, when I look at my life, when I look at my success, I mean, there's so many people who have helped me get here, right? I'm starting with my mother and my brothers and sisters and friends and fellow CEOs and so on. So you can never take credit yourself. You have to have humility about that. The other thing is you have to put all this in perspective, because there's times where, you know, your ego can get big. You can get over your skis in terms of your own success. I had this woman who was, I don't even know how I would categorize her. I guess she was a soothsayer, but she did massage and she would kind of tell your future. She was really amazing. She had worked at a cancer center and taken her skills to help people pass on to the next life. And she became a good friend of mine. She was 80-some years old, still alive. She was working on me one day and she goes, oh, you know, your future is so bright. You're going to have great success. And, you know, my ego started to blow up. I go, yeah, I can't believe how I did this. And, you know, I really played my cards right and all this stuff. And she goes, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, and I'm like, what? She goes, you're just a vehicle. Yeah. You know, the universe is doing this through you. You're not doing anything. You're just the vehicle. And my ego went, meh, you know, it just took me down right away. And I think if you look at life like that, hey, maybe the universe is channeling something through me in an effort that, you know, I can make humanity better, or I can do better for my staff, or I can motivate some person that's going through a hard time, or, you know, I can help somebody that's going through a medical problem. That's my goal. I mean, my staff has been sending me old clips of stuff I've done over the years that I've long forgotten. And I watched a clip from 2017, and I forgot that this even happened, but I paid off all the layaways it was in Walmart, paid off 53 layaways to people before Christmas. Oh, and, wow. You know, I'm not saying that to get credit, but it's like, I forgot I did that, which I should, right? It's not the kind of thing you take a banner around, look at me, I did this, right? And so they just sent me this, and it's like, okay. And you have to look for these opportunities, right? That if you're in a position of power or wealth or whatever, you got to look for these opportunities to help people, because that's part of the deal why you're successful, right? You have an obligation to help those that are less fortunate, and that's part of the mantra or the mission that I think we have at this company. You know, we started a potato soup foundation, and potato soup, that's a whole nother story where my mom ran out of money when I was in high school, and she had to steal potatoes from work for us to eat for 8 days. Wow. And that's all we could eat, because she had a can of milk, an onion, and and some butter, and she made potato soup, and she paid potatoes back with interest. So, that story always motivated me, and she would say, hey, I know you're going to be great someday, but make sure you take care of your staff. So the first thing I did when I started Aegis was start the Potato Soup Foundation. What has been amazing to me, Dean, about this foundation is, we have 3,000 staff.
Yeah.
We have like 600 people who have never contributed to anything in their life, never given a donation to anyone, that contribute to the Potato Soup Foundation. It may be 25 cents a paycheck, maybe 50, but they're giving to their brothers and sisters in this organization.
I love it.
Yeah, that's community.
Well, and it's, you practice what you preach there. I think you can learn a lot from our elders. Clearly you have, whether it was through massage and luminary commentary that allowed you to realize that maybe I need to be guided on this path. This project of you speaking with 100-century-old humans.
Right. My 100-100 project, 10,000 years of wisdom.
Oh, and I just had like this Malcolm Gladwell moment of 10,000 hours, and you have like 10,000 years. Where are we going to go with this data?
Yeah. Well, I started thinking, I wrote a book called 30 Summers More about longevity 5 or 6 years ago. And it turned into a bestseller. And I interviewed, I don't know how many, 6, 7, 8, 100 plus year olds for that book. But I never got it on film or anything else. I just took notes. And I thought, I need to capture these people on film. And so I told my staff, how many 100-year-olds do we have in the company? We have 62 that are cognitive and can carry on a conversation, right? We have more than that have dementia or whatever. But we have 62. I said, okay, schedule an interview with 62.
Yeah.
And I've done, I think, 16 now. And we have a film crew come in and we interview them for an hour. And I did 6 a couple weeks ago. I did 6 in one day, which was exhausting.
Yes.
I would never do that again. But I tell you, it is such a profound experience. To sit down with 100-year-old, let alone 100-year-olds, it's just it's so moving and motivating. And you realize, and maybe even worry a little bit about why these people are the greatest generation and why our kids may not be the greatest generation, right? Because they had such persistence, perseverance. They were always so positive. I interviewed this one lady. She said, well, I was spending the night one night at my girlfriend's house. And very early, before we were even awake, like 6 in the morning, her mom came in and she said, you have to go home right away. Now, this woman was Japanese and she was staying with her girlfriend who was Caucasian. She said, your dad has to see you right now. So she went home. Her dad said, well, there was a very bad thing that happened yesterday. Pearl Harbor was bombed.
Oh.
And he said, our life is going to change, and it's going to change quickly. He said within a couple days, the FBI came to her house and said, load up a suitcase. You can have one suitcase and get in this big truck. And so they loaded up everything they could in a suitcase. And she said, as we drove away, we saw the neighbors running towards our house. And we saw the neighbors carrying out, our radio, our clothes, our dolls, our toys, everything, just pillaging the house, right? Because the neighbors knew that these people were going to internment camps. So I'm interviewing, I'm almost in tears. I'm like, oh my God, that must have been awful. She goes, no, not really. I go, well, you were in a prison camp. She goes, no, we were in an internment camp. She goes, Dwayne, it was like a summer camp. And I go, okay, come on, tell me. I can't believe that. She goes, well, we had our own Japanese doctors because they were in prison as well. We had our own Japanese cooks. We grew our own organic vegetables. We played our own games. We had our own church services. She said, it was actually a pretty good life. I go, I can't believe you've spun it to believe that, right? And even say that. She goes, well, this is how we survived it, right?
Yeah.
And so the positivity of that, the opportunity for her to look at that and say, this was a positive experience, not many people would do that. Not many people in this generation.
Yeah. You gotta have faith. We've all been through so much in, especially these last 5 years, this once in 100-year event of the pandemic. That's happened before, of course, with the Spanish flu and the Roaring 20s, and kind of how social revival happened. Credit was cheap. It actually was invented back then and caused all kinds of interesting dynamics, and maybe without the parameters that it should have had in the stock market. But I wonder where we're going to be, at this time next year, we've got an election coming up. We've got some of these folks that you'll be interviewing will remember the Roaring 20s. They will remember the Spanish flu, perhaps. And that pandemic was pretty crushing to real estate, both the good and the bad side of it. And, I wonder if you would share any lessons learned. Could you see it coming? Was it a tough time for you in your industry? How are we thriving through?
Well, it was, I will say without hesitation, I've done this for almost 40 years, since 1985. It was without hesitation the hardest time I've ever been through. On so many levels. First of all, we couldn't tour because the state said you're on lockdown,
Wow.
and the buildings are essentially, locked down, and no one can come in or out except the people that work there. So that was the first thing, and then people started to die, right? And keep in mind, COVID was invented in Kirkland, Washington, right here in our backyard, right? At a life care nursing home. And so it's literally spread like wildfire. Every day I was fearful for my staff. Every day.
Wow.
I mean, you want to talk about heroes. I mean, people that went in every day and took care of the most frail people without fear of their own life, right? And so that was devastating that these people did it. And we actually formed a COVID board, which was very innovative. And what we did was I went out and got ER doctors. I got doctors from China. I've got researchers. I got people that studied holistic medicine. I got like 7 different types of physicians and medical professionals. And every week we would meet and they would advise us on what we should do next. Because the ER people were seeing, and they could tell us what people are doing and what kind of reactions they have, what's the best medications and so on. So we were feeding that information not only to Aegis, but we were feeding it to the entire industry. And so I would go on the radio or on podcasts or in newsletters and say, this is what we should be doing. And so people were, even my competitors were like, oh, I'm so glad you're doing this. So we were a leader in that. And because of that, our cases were substantially less. I mean, I was hearing of companies that lost 100, 200 staff to this, that passed away.
It's tragedy.
Yeah, we in 2 years lost 1 staff member, and he died 2 weeks before I could get a shot in his arm. And so we were talking to the people who were making the vaccines. We were talking to the researchers. We were begging to be at the front of the line because our residents and staff were the most frail. And so, I think it was February that we got, maybe end of January of 21, that we got shots in arms. So within 12 months, we were being vaccinated the first shot, and that really, really helped us. But when you can't move people in and people are dying, our census fell by 13%, which is devastating. We were still ahead of where the industry was at that time, because the industry fell like 17%. And we clawed back our way. We're about 86% as a company now, 86, 87, but we're still not at 93 where we were. And I think COVID just put this doubt in their mind about senior housing, right? So there's a little dent in the car about, hey, this is where it all started. I will tell you, at least in our company, we're safer than we ever have been before.
I mean, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste, right? So you can learn some things from it. And I want to talk about that because the industry has been hammered. I mean, our Fed has used a sledgehammer and not a scalpel with, bank rate. Obviously, we're all dealing with variable rates in some capacity. That's had an impact to our industry. And that's coming off a sugar high of almost free money and unbridled consumerism, and now it feels like an overcorrection to me. And I'm just wondering where things are going to balance out, both in your industry and, you're a consumer, you're a collector, you're monitoring all of those different economic windows, I think, because you have this broad aperture through your YPO work, through all of the other political relationships that you have. So, where do you think we are and where are we going to be a year from now? Well,
I think... some people say, stay afloat in 24 so you thrive in 25, right? I think January of 25 is not going to be as thriving as we think. That's the first statement I would make. I think you're going to see another 25 basis points off the Fed rate here by the end of the year. They've got to be careful. They're not going to do a 25 basis points during the election month.
Yeah.
So it's either going to be September or December that's going to happen. Would it happen 25 and 25? I don't think so, because inflation is still not at a number that they want. I think if there is a good sign, unemployment is inching up. So it's at 4% now nationwide. You get unemployment up to 4.3, 4.4, 4.5. The Feds, even if inflation's at 2.8, 2.9, they'll probably drop it, right? Because they'll want to stem the tide of unemployment. So, and obviously the Fed operates separate from the political system, but I think we can all do a wink wink and go, oh, really? Yeah. And so, does a sitting president want to go into the election with, a 30-year mortgage at 8.3%? Probably not, So I think there will be some political pressure on the Feds. And I think there's consumer political pressure. And as you said, we were all on the sugar high from everybody to refi their house every 5 years, right, and pull equity out and buy the boat and buy the car and do a remodel and so on. And the problem now is people are looking around, and you've got two bads. You've got the bad of unemployment going up, and you have the bad of not being able to access that equity.
Yeah.
And so people are looking and going, oh, this doesn't feel good. And so there's less disposable income for people to go do the vacations and fun things. And we're seeing that. We're seeing a lot of restaurant closures. We're seeing bankruptcies in major retail brands. We're seeing a lot of layoffs in big companies. I mean, local companies here, Amazon, Microsoft. And so when you look at that, you say, okay, I don't think this thing's going to correct in 3 or 4 months. I think you're going to, if you can get through 24 and probably into Q2 or Q3 of 25, you're going to be you're going to be in good shape. For our company, we've always been very conservative. We've always said, let's have enough money on the balance sheet that we can weather this for a couple of years. The big problem for us is we have floating debt with new construction. And floating debt was being loaned to us 2.5 years ago at 2.9%.
Yeah, oops.
And now it's 8.3%.
Yeah.
And so you look at that and say, man, that's painful. And what will happen, I think, is we will see our industry, just had a report that came out yesterday that said by the end of 25, we'll be 50% underserved in the senior housing market.
Because you're not building enough. Well,
it was twofold. Remember, you had COVID, where no one could build during COVID because no banks would lend, right? Well, that lasted 2.5, 3 years. And then we had about a 4 to 6 month reprieve. Then we had the interest rate crisis, and nobody wanted to borrow because their numbers wouldn't work, right? So this will go on for like 5, 6 years where there's no building in senior housing, and yet the demographic curve is hockey sticking. So you look at that, and they said, we would have to pick up the pace that we're building now by 3.5 times what we're building now to catch this demand. So, our future is very bright in terms of this industry. If you can get through 25, the demand is just going to be crushing in terms of how many people are looking for senior housing.
I'm taking the same view. We do a lot of new developments, and my background before coming to the U.S. was as a developer, and I found my way into sales and marketing, and here we are with a general brokerage. But, the in-city high-rise product line was absolutely, our backyard, and we haven't seen a spade in the ground since 2020, and demand can rise much quicker than supply when you're talking about a 5-year build. You can get into politics too. We can get into some of the issues we're seeing with, the mandatory housing affordability and with Condominium Act and some consumer protection that works so well it scares developers. But we can also talk about just the cost of goods and, hourly rates look like today. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just not affordable to build these products affordably. So of course we have an affordable housing crisis, and we're well behind. You're talking about being 50% of the supply needed for the aging community. It's not much different in all product types and price points. We're simply not building enough housing. And we haven't had as much in-migration either. That's calmed down. I mean, we were the fastest growing large city for the last decade, and we still are, but the amount of new bodies coming into the greater area has lessened, and so the demand has lessened as well. I wonder if that's going to change in November. We'll find out what happens with this capital gains tax. Unfortunately, we were the evergreen state, which was supposed to be one of the greatest places to make money and keep it, as opposed to the golden state, which is famously losing wealth, and you need to be made of gold to afford California. What do you think the chances are of that getting an up-down vote on in November for this capital gains tax repeal?
Well, Jeff Bezos didn't move to Florida because he wanted to be closer to SpaceX. Let's just start there.
You think that's what it was?
Well, I know that's what it was. And he, ironically, 30 days after he moved, he traded,
sold some stock.
Sold a lot of stock. And so I think what's going to happen in the state, I mean, who knows what politicians think, but you're going to have a series of events. You're going to drive out all the high net worth individuals. Yeah. I mean, I've just had 3 friends that moved to Wyoming, okay? Wyoming has a 1,000-year tax deference program. Now, guess what happened in Wyoming? The houses now that, if it was a house, let's say in Bellevue, that would sell for $7 million, now in Wyoming are selling for $40 million because all the wealthy people move there for tax deference, right? Now you say, well, how does that work? No poor person could move there. They don't want the poor person to move there. They want to have that tax base, and they want people to bring business there and their tax dollars there and everything else. So you're going to drive out the people that supported the museums, that give to all the philanthropies, that supported the homeless programs, that, built the schools, that built the roads, that did all this, right? And you're going to be left with people that, don't want to pay, or I should say, cannot make up the amount of tax that those people paid, right?
Yeah.
And so that's going to be a problem for the state. I can tell you at the very highest level, I have conversations with CEOs every week about this topic. And people are making plans. I'm moving to Florida. I'm buying in Wyoming. I'm going to Nevada. I'm going to Arizona. California has the same problem. And Washington tends to be the little sister of California. Whatever California does, Washington thinks, oh, that looks like a pretty good idea. We'll do that. We'll go look at California and their economy and what's happening down there. You cannot even buy house insurance in California. It is so bad.
Yeah.
So it's difficult. I think there will be a wake-up call. I don't think the 7% will extend to real estate. I hope not.
Oh boy, that's going the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Don't even say that.
There is a movement to add that. And I think people someone will put the pencil down and go, hey, let's look at, what we netted here, in the last few years with this program. And hopefully people will wake up.
Well, the tax policies across the U.S. has winners and losers on the state level for sure, and it's not ignored by us in residential real estate. Obviously, we're representing some of that global wealth. We're part of some of those conversations, and maybe circling back to Aegis Living and the idea of being present as an advisory council in these family offices, at the dinner table. There's no time is too soon to start the dialogue about what do we want our future to be, and if this, then that. I think that's what's happening right now. I mean, we also have estate tax changes that are sunsetting, and likely another move by Congress to keep that rolling forward. But if not, can you imagine the rush to the counter to unload capital gains out of single-family homes, especially if you are living and lingering longer in a 6-bedroom home that has had 5 bedrooms vacant for 40 years.
Right.
I mean, you're sitting on a powder keg of equity. When are you going to light the match and exit? And I'm just thinking about demographics now, and I'm thinking about the impacts for a lot of equity harvesting in this great state of Washington. These are your future clients as well. And so I'm just kind of wondering what the next, the balance of this decade, there will be major decisions made, but when you buy and when you sell aren't always timed perfectly, and when you make a decision to move into a community such as yours. So are you in conversations with wealth managers? I know we've talked before about collaborating on this front and just trying to bring broker opinion of value, and here's the time to buy and sell, or here's how we're going to migrate your portfolio, knowing that eventually mom and or dad are going to seek out a solution that will will probably include selling the family home and moving into one of your communities.
Yeah, I mean, we talk to wealth managers all the time. They usually seek us out for our advice. The problem with the strategic planning element of this is people move into our communities because it's event driven, right? Okay. They had a stroke, they fell down the stairs, broke their hip, they were diagnosed with dementia. So it's event driven. And so it's not like people say, hey, I'm 82 now, I'm going to live here for one more year, and then I'm 83, I'm going to move into an independent living, and I'm 84, I'm going to move into assisted living. It doesn't work like that. It's people want to live in their homes as long as they possibly can, right? Just like you and I would. So, but the problem is they can't afford care in their homes. I mean, I was just talking to a family yesterday. They'd hired private caregivers around the clock. It's $36,000 a month.
Oh.
A month.
Wow.
$36,000 a month. And so you can't afford 24-hour care in your private home. So you're left with no option. Plus it's not best for the resident, because what that resident needs is community. They need friends,
stimulation
and activities and music therapy and PT and all these things, right? That's the problem is that who knows when that event will take place, right?
Yeah. Well, and we do have those conversations about real estate portfolios, and certainly there's been popular conversations now about timing the market relative to which way mortgage rates are going. Is there going to be a rush to the counter? Do I want to lead in this sort of increase of supply, especially, in the higher price points? I think there's a lot of people holding their breath to see what happens in November, not just on the national level, but with this repeal of the capital gains tax. I can tell you the water table is rising, property values are increasing again, despite the higher mortgage rates. It's just a simple supply and demand imbalance. We're not building enough homes. We still have net gains in population. I do think climate change is driving more and more folks this direction. I mean, we're expected to have another hot summer here, but as you said, for insurance purposes or just livability, I mean, there are some real changes going on in some very popular places to live, like the floods we were talking about in California, right, or the storms. I think they're calling for a record number of major category storms in the Gulf this year. So not that you want to wish ill on any market, but I'm thinking about, the way the climate's changing, meteorologically, but also politically. And I kind of get the sense that now that we've gone through COVID largely and people are ready to make a move, they might just be taking one more big breath to see politically what's going to change. And 2025 could be a very active year for people to do so.
Well, I think there's an emergence of a confluence of a variety of things, right? Mm-hmm. So I think COVID kind of changed people's mind about, do I want to live in downtown Seattle, right? Or do I want to live in New York City? Just by the viruses that we know, there's going to be more viruses that come. I mean, we want to think COVID was a one and done. There's going to be more viruses that come. So people are either buying a second home, or they're saying, maybe I should move to Montana, right? Or Whidbey Island, or, some other place, a rural town, Bend, Oregon, right? And you're starting to see these rural communities boom. I mean, absolutely explode. Boise, which was a cow town for a long time, is on fire, right? I just had a friend that moved to Sparks, Nevada. But it's more than the COVID fear and everything else. A lot of it's just the political environment. Yeah. And people are just saying, I'm tired of walking downtown Seattle and having a heroin needle on the ground, or someone harass me for money, or walking through Pike's Place and I hear gunshots. I mean, people are just tired of it, right? So
sadly,
I'm not going to put up with that anymore.
These King County expats, I kind of call them. We're doing a lot more business now up in like Cle Elum or in rural Kitsap County, and basically, with transportation initiatives and now with these hybrid work weeks, people can choose to live and work differently.
Absolutely.
And we see a flood of people that are leasing out their home in Ballard and moving to Cle Elum and buying a home at half the price and maybe raising their kids in the less sensitive years. But when you're spending the most time with your kids to go catch a frog and climb a hill and just kind of be the wild outdoors, and it's definitely less urban. That's not to say that we're not seeing revival, and there is recovery in both the Seattle and Bellevue downtown markets. It's been a tough tough road post-COVID. Politically, we could talk about dysfunction. We can talk about social challenges. We can talk about the big bruise we got, through national and international publicity. But it's feeling like it's on the turnaround. What we don't know is the future of these commercial office buildings, because those very folks that are choosing to have a hybrid work week or just simply work from their jammies anywhere they choose to on a salmon stream instead of being in the mainstream of downtown office workers. I mean, we're still only half of what the 380,000 person population was of daytime office workers in downtown Seattle. And there's some stress. There is some real confusion about what's going to happen to those buildings. I mean, let me ask you this question. Why don't we go and buy a commercial office building and convert it into an Aegis Living?
Costs too much.
Doesn't make sense for residential either.
Well, it's functionally obsolete.
Right.
I mean, I can't make it handicap accessible.
Sure.
I'd be better to bulldoze it and build a brand new building. Right? It's not going to have fun. It's not going to have fun roof lines and cool windows and all the residential things.
Even if we put an upside down Scandinavian boat in the lobby?
No, you can put the Viking ship in there, but that's not the sole selling point.
If you can't come up with a solution for those office buildings, I don't know who's going to.
I have converted many buildings over the 40 years, but to take a downtown high rise, I mean, look at what they're selling for. They're selling for 20 cents on the dollar. I mean, there's one that's sold in San Francisco. It was 20 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
And these are beautiful buildings. And the problem with the work from home thing is real, right? Mm-hmm. But it's even more than that, work from home, because if somebody says, well, I have a house in Bellevue, it's worth $1.6 million, and I can work from home and I can live anywhere. Well, if I work from home, I'm going to go live in Bose, Montana, and I can buy a nicer home for $800,000. And I'm going to take that $800,000, I'm going to put it in a treasury that's paying me 5.3%.
Right.
And, I'm going to have residual income of $3,000 a month. And, hey, I'm going to do this job for a little bit and, get my 401k and maybe retire at 55. That's where the way, I just had a friend who worked at Boeing. Again, another guy that just moved to Montana. That was exactly the thinking. I mean, they had a house that was in Bothell that was $1.2 million. They bought a house that was $450,000 in Nevada. They're like, hey, I've got money in the bank and I'm putting it in a treasury. And, that's the one good thing you can make an investment in, because you put it in a treasury right now. Now, treasuries are going to drop. But, if you're getting 5.2, 5.3%, that's a nice little safe residual income, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, real estate has still made more wealth than most other industries. And let's talk about demographics. The silver tsunami, how significant is this generation for your business and for my business?
Well, the first 80-year-old will turn, from the baby boomer generation, will turn 80 in 2026. Right?
Okay.
And then you have a hockey stick that goes for 18 years.
Wow.
Right? So our customers coming in the building are about 83, 84. So for us at about 29 or 30, you're going to have so many people coming in the door. And again, we have a lack of development. So you intersect those two things. You got this hockey stick and a lack of development starting in late 25. Your cap rates are going to be very juicy, right? I think the other thing is, people are going to look more for community. And this is the thing I would advise you on. We were talking earlier about the Port Gamble thing. People want to be in a community, and not necessarily an Aegis community, although I recommend that. But people want to be in a community where we all know each other and have, if I'm not at the social on Sunday, people want to come and knock on my door and see if I'm okay, right? And, we rally around a big bonfire and we get together every Sunday, and there's a clubhouse, and, it's not a country club, but it's a residential neighborhood where people are supportive of each other. I think those are on the rise, right? And that's the interim step before assisted living. So I think those will be on the rise, and they're going to be more rural because you can get a bigger bang for your buck.
Sure.
You can know your neighbors. We know that community is an antidote to loneliness and a recipe for longevity. So people will look at that. You have your own organic garden that the community tends to, and all these things. So I think that's a big deal. I think builders are going to have to be more senior specific in terms of the way they build the buildings in terms of hallways, the widths in terms of handicap accessibility.
Lower level masters.
Lower levels, exactly. Yeah. Stairways going up to the things, ramps, so on. And so that's going to be a bigger deal for people. And, these people will be coming off houses that they've had for 40 years that, they're free and clear. Right now, what is it? 68% of Americans own their own home. Mm-hmm. So you look at that and say, okay, well, you're going to have a lot of people coming into that silver tsunami are going to have, $1 million plus if they're from Seattle in equity that can go into a rural community and block that down and do very well.
I mean, maybe the stair step before entering one of your buildings, and I have personal experience here because many years ago my grandmother had passed, but I will credit her move to a single level lock and leave condominium lifestyle in Burnaby where she was, and without all the domestic responsibilities and the stairs and the concern of an elder living alone, right? And just always being, it's been 10 o'clock. Have you heard from mom? I mean, who wants that? But in these condominiums, they have care services through concierge, and they have people that can check in, and they are vibrant communities. I will tell you, I believe that she definitely enjoyed her time more in the sunset of life, but probably extended her life by 3 or 4 years just by nature of people visiting her being involved in the book club or even the homeowners association board. Be careful of those folks, they got time on their hands.
Yeah.
But that is just one of the potential stair steps to an Aegis Living community where they might not need the daytime and daily care, but they also are migrating. And similar to what you're saying, we have an undersupply of multifamily housing. What you see is what you get for inventory right now. It's very difficult to pencil new projects. We are currently selling like our Greystone community, which is on First Hill, that is walkable to a lot of medical care on Pill Hill, as they say. But I mean, we're selling below replacement costs. And when it's sold out, I mean, it could be many years before we see any new construction again. So of course there will be a bounce in the market. I think the same is true, though, Dwayne, as you talk about the restaurants, as you talk about the hospitality, you talk about the commercial office buildings, that I agree with you. They're going to go through some tough sledding for several years, but their buildings aren't going to go away. They're just going to be leased at lower rates, and they're going to attract new talent, which will draw more bodies, and it'll create housing demand nearby. So I mean, won't we just get a collective reset and our urban markets will just regenerate like they did after the last pandemic?
I don't know. I'm waiting for someone to come up with a creative solution for that. I think the way we used to go into the office at 8 o'clock and leave at 5:30, I think those days are gone. I don't, because people like the option better, right? Sure. And so if you're a company that goes, hey, you have to be here at 8:30 and come at 5:30, I'm just going to go to the next company, right? So how do you combat that? And then you look and say, well, what are the alternative options for an office building? I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of malls are switching to these entertainment centers and fun centers.
We've done some of that, yeah.
But I mean, you're not going to make every high-rise in Seattle a fun center, right? So that's not going to happen. I think it's a complex question that I'm not sure there's a clear answer to, and it's going to take a big balance sheet, innovative company to go, well, you're going to come to this office because I have daycare, I have your own restaurant, I have, maybe you have condos in the office that the family lives there while you have a work and stay situation, right? A lot of this plays into immigration reform too, right? So, I mean, if you have people from other countries that say, hey, I have the 60-story office tower and, 40 stories are offices, but 20 stories are, condominiums and a daycare center and restaurants and a gym and everything else. Maybe that will attract people and go, well, I'm not really leaving home. I'm just going down to the next floor, right?
Yeah, and I've seen the same thing in my offices. So we have 6 branch offices throughout the Seattle Bellevue metro area. Quite famously beautiful spaces. I think you've been in several of them. And I believe that this is a living room for our community. It is a place of celebration for our agents and their clients. And just, I like nice places too.
Yeah.
I like bespoke retail environments. Now, was it difficult to maintain the food and beverage programs? We've done great things with DeLille Cellars. We've done things with St. Michel Wine Estates. We're currently partnered now in Bellevue on a rebirth of our downtown Bellevue location on Old Main Street with Adrian Lopez. Actually, tonight we're having a soft opening, so UNT should stop by. I just did a partnership with Fog Rose Atelier, which is a high tea concept, but also with bougie desserts and, of course, cocktail pairings. But they're all hybrid venues for private events,
right?
In part for a couple of themes. Number one, I know that real estate happens where the conversation starts. And so if we can attract people to come into our communities through that kind of vibrant workspace, there's a greater chance there could be some lead generation and culture being built. Obviously, there's an economic model too, because you're paying rent 24/7. So why not have more of an 18-hour use?
But I think your locations, whether it's Kirkland or Bellevue or whatever, you're talking almost like the little village concept,
yes.
right? That's a very different concept than a high-rise, 70-story office
right.
building in downtown Seattle, for a variety of reasons. One, safety being one of them.
Yep.
Two, affluency of the marketplace, right? Three, people like walking around and shopping
Pedestrian,
and touching, everything. So I think you're safe in that, right? Would you open a Sotheby's on First and Pike? Probably not. I don't know. Maybe you would, but that wouldn't be on my top 10 list of things to do.
We're not too far away. We are in Belltown to make a commitment, but we did downsize. One of the reasons I even toiled with the idea, what is the future of a real estate office? Do you even need it? Because, only half of our agents are coming back to it, pretty similar
right.
to what you saw before. But I believe they're important for cultural programming and then the event side of the business. I'd love to do an event with you. We've certainly had, BBJ come in and do events. We've had a lot of executives that just appreciate the venue and the food and beverage pairing instead of going to a big hotel ballroom, which, if I see another speed ramp down to a garage rising up an elevator across a food court to get to a venue, it's just by the time I walked into the room, I'm already exhausted, as opposed to our much more bespoke, right size environments that feels like you're in someone's living room. Really, Dwayne, probably no different for why you took your executive team to your ranch. Yeah. It feels like an extension of you. I like doing business in that kind of environment. But culture. I will tell you, since before the pandemic, it was always our calling card. People just loved to support one another. They wanted to be together. We had vibrant meetings, dynamic events, and it was rich. And then the lights went out. And it's been a struggle to get back to that. But for recruiting and retention purposes, the culture has to come back. So I didn't choose to walk away from it. I'm doubling down on it. And it would have been easier to just revamp the retail storefronts, but I'm programming back the food and lifestyle, and the events business because I want to attract that culture back. I mean, what does culture mean to you in your business? And what are you doing? This is a very large building. I can't imagine it's the same occupancy as it was 4 years ago.
We have people come in 4 days a week, and we give them a flex day.
Sure.
So people are out in buildings, they're talking to managers, they're doing assessments on residents, they're talking to the marketing staff and so on. We don't really want people in the office. That we want them in the field doing, because that's where the real work is done.
Right.
Corporate office is just overhead. They're not making us any money. We do want people in the office for community, right? Okay. And that's where culture starts.
Yes,
culture starts with community. And what we don't want is people just home 3 days a week, because you miss out on so much what I call the door jam conversation. And it's just peeking your head in the door to greet the new staff member, asking them what they're doing this weekend. What movie did you see? How are your kids? Oh, is your son still pitching baseball? All these little things. That's what bonds these things, all these little nuggets that bond people together and make it more than a colleague, it's a friend, And then, I think as CEOs, our job is to provide more glue, more opportunities for that to happen. Whether it's the potluck, where I know you take people out on your boat a lot, I mean, that's the glue, and you're the facilitator of that. Like my soothsayer said, you're the vehicle, right? So, this office was built as a vehicle with art and conversation and a kitchen and so on. And so I think for us, it's a point of distinction. I mean, your culture is a point of, I mean, we were awarded a Glassdoor top 50 out of 700,000 companies nominated.
It's incredible.
We were a top 20 company for work-life balance, right? Out of 700,000 companies nominated. We've been voted best company to work for 12 times. You don't do that unless you have culture, unless you have community, right? You know, our Glassdoor scores are very high. So you do that by constantly thinking, and you never get there. It's never like, oh, I got the culture now, right? In fact, the minute you think that, you've lost it.
That's exactly right.
So you've got to constantly feed into it and ask people, what do you need? I mean, at my ranch, we had the summit meeting. I'm like, what else can I be doing? Who can I meet with? Who can I speak to help people feel safe? And that's the first priority for people. Do I feel safe, right? It's a tough economy. Do I feel safe with my job? What's the future like? So I talk about those things. You know, I have all company calls. I have 3,000 employees. I get everybody on the phone. I just talk about where we're going. I try to tell not only good news first, but bad news first. You know, here's the good news, here's the bad news.
Right.
This is what I'm dealing with. This is what's keeping me awake at night. And the more you do that, you know, we have a concept around here called management by vulnerability. What I have found is the more vulnerable you are with your personal whatever, and tell them this is hard for me, this is what's going on, whatever, the more people are attracted to you, right? Because for some reason, we all think we, as CEOs, have to be like a Ken doll, you know? Geez, I wear the perfect suit, I drive the perfect car, my wife's name is Buffy, she was a Delta Phi, you know, I have an MBA from Wharton, you know. Well, you know what all that does? That just alienates your staff from you. You know, it just thinks, I'll never be that person. I don't even know one other person like that, right? But if you can say, hey, you know, I went through some hard times as a kid, had horrible credit when I was 20, went through a bad divorce, you know, was not the best kid, got in some trouble, you know, then people are like, hey, you're my brother. Yeah. I gotcha, you know?
Well, that trust and that truth and that transparency is so important as leaders. You know, we're taught to be working on the vision, to work on the culture, and to work on the numbers at the end of the day. But the numbers are really a byproduct of those other two things, because you got to go to where that market's going next and keep the drive forward. Why do you keep doing this? I mean, you've done well. Do you need to take the risks?
I get asked that question a lot. I think because I love it. You know, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go fishing or skiing or hanging on the beach all day. My brain is too active. Right. Sometimes I can't even live with it. You know, I'm writing 2 new books right now. I'm doing this docu-series with a 100-year-old person. That'll lead to a new book. I'm building new buildings. So I look and I go, what would I do? It's not about money. It's not about, you know, and I have total flexibility. I can work remote. I can go on vacations. I was telling someone this the other day, in 38 years, I've never not answered a phone call or an email every day. I've not missed one day in 38 years.
You're very accessible.
I'm addicted, right? I think I take that back. I think for 4 days in Africa, my phone didn't work. I had a sat phone, so I couldn't check email.
You tried to be
I tried. Absolutely. I'm like, damn, I gotta go to the mountain peak.
Elon,
right?
Help me out.
Maybe if I ride this rhino up the mountain, I can get it. But I think if you love something, you know, why stop? And you know, the people that I love, that I look up to, are people like Charlie Munger, who died here recently, you know, Warren Buffett's partner, gave a CNBC interview a week before he died in a full suit and tie, you know, giving advice to people. Warren Buffett, you know, 94, still going at it. You know, Richard Branson challenging people to swim contests around Neckar Island, you know, and he's
living his best life.
Living his best life. So if I can inspire people, still stay connected, have some remote working, that to me is a perfect life, man.
Yeah. Well, you are inspiring, and you drive me to want more and to build more. And there's lots of opportunity. You know, we move at the speed of opportunity, and you know, I think even in the down markets, you can build market share and be ready for the next run, which is hopefully listening to you. That'll be just thrive in 25, I think, is the motto.
Thrive in 25. I mean, I think you're going to see as many as 3 25 basis point cuts in 25.
All we need is a little hope. You know, people are already betting on that, and so they'll buy then refi, especially when, you know, what's the difference if interest rates are 100 basis points more than you like, if the property price and the selection, are going in different directions, because we're seeing, 1% a month of appreciation in home prices on the median basis in top neighborhoods. And then obviously, you want to fall in love with where you are, which is obviously part of your success, because you've created environments that people love to be in, especially at the most important time of their life.
Well, that's a question I have for you is
Sure.
what are you seeing in terms of appreciation on the east side, and what are you seeing in Seattle?
Now, all neighborhoods, product types, and price points behave differently. We're just shy of 1% a month of median home price increases, according to S&P Case-Shiller. People need to remember that that index is a metro area of King, Snohomish, and King County, and it speaks only to resales of single-family homes. It does not include new construction, and it does not include multifamily. So it is a good barometer to compare all the, the top 20 cities. And you probably see last Tuesday of every month that data comes out, and it reports 60 days in the rearview mirror, right? So we know that we have an inventory problem. There's actually more inventory than we've had a year ago. It's up about 30 or 40%, depending on the product type you're looking at. And that's because I think more folks are just running tired of it. They wanted to make a move for a reason, and they've sat on their hands for the last couple of years trying to protect that 3% mortgage interest rate. And you would think with that added supply that prices would be a little more negotiated, and they're not. They are seeing rising prices and even multiple offers. If you're talking about unique properties like waterfront, we're setting new benchmarks yet again. We just had a record price in Kirkland that closed. Up in Cle Elum, we just had a record price that closed. And, we often find that is for us in most of the markets. So overall, we have limited land still been imported here from other states that are taxing their wealthy. And we talked about those trends as well. The stock market's done very well. For whatever the losses were in some of these tech companies of the years past, now they're at new benchmarks. Look at what AI has been doing to Microsoft, for instance. So these are incredible wealth events that are just fueling the real estate demand.
What city has shocked you in terms of its appreciation? In Seattle Metro.
Yeah, I've been shocked by the devaluation of some, which is in our urban markets, which begs the opportunity. But, you look at Mercer Island, you look at Kirkland, you look at any of the best school districts. That's people are buying accessibility, they're buying school districts, and they're buying the future appreciation, right? Mm-hmm. So, look at Hunts Point. We had a unbelievable waterfall event that triggered off of a sale during COVID that, probably changed property taxes. The reality is you have a distinct microclimate, but there's still homes that are $70, $80 million sitting on the market, and they will probably find a buyer, but it might not be that price. So you never know. And I will also tell you that we're doing as many sales off market as we are on the market. Now, these are public records, but the waterfall effect happened when property values surprised and delighted other residents to say, well, if that's what you achieved there, then what could I get for this? And by the way, if they were leaving, I always admired that home, or I want to develop it. Can I buy that? And it was just like this shuffling of ownership that went on in a very distinct microclimate, like Hunts Point.
What markets do you say is the next coming market? Is there a town that you go, oh man, watch this, it's going to boom?
I made an investment in Cle Elum. I believe the I-90 $1.3 billion expansion project east of the pass going to be a game changer for the historic town of Cle Elum. It's already seeing some gentrification. That's not popular always for some of the locals, but when farm to table restaurants come in and you're seeing boutiques pop up, even real estate companies, I'm excited because I watched what happened, Dwayne, on Highway 99 going to Whistler from West Vancouver. You remember the Sea to Sky Highway, sometimes called the Ski to Die Highway because it was very dangerous. Well, they weren't going to let that happen in 2010 when the Olympics came in. So they pumped about $1 billion into it, straightened out some curves, put in a median, made sure there's avalanche protection. And bottom line is it made the city of Squamish much more accessible. Well, what do you think has been one of the fastest growing small towns in British Columbia and in fact in Canada? Squamish. I'll be there in 10 days looking at the harbinger of what I think is going to happen in Cle Elum. We have a client up there, Trailside Home, brief commercial, but they have over 1,000 lots that are entitled to build just upland of downtown Cle Elum within walking distance, in another view-oriented community called Skyline Ridge. So I'm making some bets there. I just started a division for farm, ranch, and vineyard, partnered with the great Krista Frosch, who was a top selling agent out of our Sotheby's office in Vancouver. And she invested years ago in that division of farm and ranch in the Okanagan area. Now, as I'm sure you know, we had some fires and a lot of damage to the crops. It's just only putting more demand into Washington State for the fruit, but also as what is deemed to be relatively long runway of capital appreciation, because the cost of that real estate here is much less than what it is in Vancouver or what it is in British Columbia. I'm excited about these micro ranches. I'm excited about these glam farms or these private label vineyards on Red Mountain. I mean, there's a lot of capital that's moving into these kind of types. I mean, you have several homes that are ex-urban. Yeah. And you don't have the same need to be in the city. And there's a lot of people that are trying to do that at different product types and price points.
Have you heard of any creative options for affordable housing?
Not very many good ones. Unfortunately, we have an affordable housing crisis. Feel free to hit us up online and look at my condominium conundrum, because the condominium product line is the last bastion of affordable ownership and apartments for rent. We now in Seattle have more people renting than we have ownership. Unfortunately, while we were the fastest growing large city with a boon of new development, believe it or not, there's 35,000 multifamily housing units built in downtown Seattle within walking distance of my office. 95% built for rent, not for sale. And that's because of the Condominium Act, developer liability, just the way the capital stack works. And basically, they're so expensive to build, they don't want to sell them, especially pre-sell them. So they want to hang on to these, annuities and sell them into the future. But there's been a correction in the apartment market as well, and there's been a dramatic slowdown on construction. We have a desperate need for more housing. I think the solution for that is going to be within the municipalities of trying to allow some rezoning applications. I'm sure you're aware of House Bill 1110, and this is the notion that single-family zoning is no longer. You will have the ability to put in ADUs and DADUs on your property throughout Washington State in all the major, larger cities. Is that going to give us 20,000 affordable housing units in your backyard? Probably not going to get you there as quickly as you think. So once again, we've got legislation that acts too slowly to the pressures, and by the time it makes an impact, it's 20 years later, and people wonder why median home prices are rising as fast as they are. You throw on top of that, this unattainability of mortgages, prices that are being paid today, and it's even further out of reach, which just puts more and more people back into the rental. I have many of our families that we're advising that are trying to liberate their basement from their children. It's actually a pretty good time, I would say, to buy the dip in the in-city markets, because you can make some gifts to your children, help them, establish credit and buy their first condominium, for instance. And I just know when the replacement costs are 30 to 40% more than what we're asking today, even though you might have to digest several years of the political system kind of figuring its way forward with our new administration, eventually they're going to find their way. Just like a restaurant might go without an owner of a kitchen is still there, and we are going to find the next steward to revamp that kitchen, and they will be making food yet again a couple years later with a different name and a different menu, but it will be a restaurant, don't you think?
Well, thank you, Dean. I appreciate being on your show. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I hope I gave you some good things to.
Well, you're a luminary. I appreciate you taking the call and having us to spend this time together. This has been Market Perspectives. I'm Dean Jones. We'll see you next time. Feel free to hit us up on social media, leave a comment. We'll see you then.